Introduction chat box, and we are recording. Yes. If we could do just your name and pronouns, hub or organization you're with, your position title, and then as a little fun thing, we're going to just put in our favorite fall treat or activity, please. And I'll put that in the chat. Putting on cozy sweaters. That's an activity. Sure. Yeah. We'll wait a couple other minutes to see if we have others join us. Pumpkin bread. Yes. Pumpkin cream chai. I'm loving this. Pumpkin patch. Fall hiking. Let's see what we got. Pumpkin patch farm. All things pumpkin patch. Yes. All the fall things. Oh, yes. The smellies at Bath and Body Works. That's a good one. All things pumpkin. Yes. Fall leaves. Yeah. It's a great one. Giving the people who hate fall a hard time. I love that. Oh, we have some birthdays. Yay. Fall scent, cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla. Fall foods. Ooh. All the fall baking. Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
It made sense to schedule this.
Are you ready for my housekeeping?
I think so. I think we can move right on in. So I'm going to do a quick overview of our agenda. So we're going to start out with some housekeeping. Then we will move into our good news. Then we will move into a fiscal grant update from Carla, followed by some ERDC check-in from Dorothy Spence. And lastly, we're going to have an early learning transition check-in from Lauren, Rachel Elliott, and Karina Guzman Ortiz. So with that, Hillary, if you would like to do your housekeeping.
Yes, Maria, can you send Kelly Poe the Zoom link for this meeting real quick while I'm doing this?
Yep.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Just a couple of quick announcements. It was so wonderful to see most of you at the Learning Collaborative last week in person. It just made my year, just in person, that in-person piece of it. Couple of things to follow up on the Learning Collaborative. Please complete the evaluation. We don't know your thoughts until you share them with us, and we can't guess them, and we don't want to. So please let us know all the thoughts in there. If you would rather share with Maria or I in a one-on-one meeting, we can also do that. We just want the feedback. We are also looking for volunteers to help plan the next one. So if you had very strong thoughts about one aspect of the Learning Collaborative and you want to bring more of that in or bring less of that in, please let us know that you want to volunteer. We are planning, not set in stone, to have a Learning Collaborative every 6 months, and we'll alternate between virtual and in person. Yeah, done with that. And then any other comments, thoughts, concerns, questions, you can put those in the evaluation, or again, just reach out to Maria and I about that. And then I have one other thing I want to just really fast ask about. I love technology. Just trying to figure out how to share my screen. Here it is. This is a diaper distribution pilot. Does everyone see my screen? Okay. We are just curious if anyone participated in this. These are the community action agencies. You can throw it in the chat or just send me a message, but we were just trying to get a sense for if any of the hubs were involved in any of these.
And there's different levels of it too. Not just, there's not just one.
if any of the hubs were involved in this process. That's it.
Not us. We have a no, not us. Okay. We can just kind of monitor the chat, but I think we will move into good news. Who has something that they would like to share, a success or appreciation, maybe for a staff member or something happening in your hub, or just any good news?
I will share good news for all of us. One, we were in person last week, which is just an amazing feat after 4 years of not being in person. And second, our contracts went out. Those feel like two really good, good pieces of news.
And I can share a quick appreciation. I just want to say I appreciate all of you, just how everyone has welcomed me and just shared, been willing to share the history of what's going on in your hubs, and all of that has really been beneficial to me. So thank you, everyone, and I really appreciate it. Just checking the chat. If no one else has any other good news. Perfect. Nope. We will move right on over to Carla. Carla, go ahead.
Great. I'm horrible when it comes to Zoom, so give me like 2 seconds.
No worries.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's see if I can get it working the rest of the way. So, let's take a look here. Make sure it works. All right. Awesome. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Carla Branson, and I am a grant manager on the grants management team. Specifically, I oversee hubs and coordinated enrollment agreements. Pretty sure almost everyone here knows who I am, but just in case. There are so many things in motion right now with both hubs and coordinated enrollment agreements and amendments and just updates. So I just wanted to check in, say hi, and briefly share they're pretty high level items with you today, and some of my thoughts on future things I want to talk about as well. I'm also want to say I'm really happy to be working alongside Hillary and Maria to support you all in the important work
I can try and change this.
That you're doing. I am really eager to kind of have an ongoing spot in the hub meetings to just kind of do more frequent check-ins and talk about things that are just coming up frequently with hubs as I'm going through my day-to-day work, and kind of share some of that stuff as well. So that's me. In case you can't already see me, that's me with slightly more makeup and a coffee cup. So most of you are familiar with me, but I love fresh starts. So just want to refresh people's memories on a little bit about who I am. So I've been with DELC now for a little bit over a year as your grant manager. Prior to that, I was at a school district in Clackamas County for 7 years, where I spent 5 of those doing direct family and client services, specifically for families with food insecurity and houselessness. And the last 2 years of that, I was at the central office working, wearing lots of hats, but working with grants, specifically as the grantee. So I 100% understand when you're mad at me about something, because I've been that person that was mad as well, or frustrated. While I am not, running around like a chicken with my head cut off at DELC, I like spending time with my husband. I have a high school freshman, and I volunteer at my local library board. And I'm trying to teach myself how to quilt, just trying to pull a bit more fun to the face. So the grant management office, like I mentioned before, I'm part of the grant management team. Our office is the ones who work with our procurement and our budget and our accounting departments to make sure that we have everything that you need to be able to have a functional agreement and have the funds to do the work that you do. It also means that I'm the person that gets to make sure that funds are being used appropriately. And grant managers in general here at DELC provide technical assistance. We respond to questions, provide resources to our other colleagues within DELC and our external partners and grantees. Anything that's related to the fiscal aspects of the grant, including the procurement process, budgets, claims, and addressing issues with like non-compliance or allowable use of funds. And I also I'm able to provide some basic technical assistance when it comes to our awards management system, which is what I wanted to segue onto next. So as we become DELC, we have been transitioning out of EGMS into our new awards management system known as AMS. I have been sending some emails in the last couple weeks about AMS, and you should be receiving some emails via the Gov Delivery system as well. If you are not getting those emails or still aren't able to access the system, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help with that. But last time I checked, the vast majority of you either had logins or had also people assigned within your organizations that were able to access, and at least one of you has already done some claiming. So that was very exciting to see. A neat thing about transitioning over to AMS is that we've started an AMS dashboard. This is the home for all things claims related. You're going to have job aids, step-by-step guides on how to do things. Any training videos that have been created are in there as well. You can sign up staff members to Gov Delivery updates if they're not getting those already. And I'm pretty sure there's more things on there as well. But it's a great resource that they've built. And as a plus, hubs and coordinated enrollment, I will be creating dashboards for both of those this fall to kind of have a place for all of our information to land and for you to have easy access to things that Hillary, Maria, and Cass all think are important for you to have as well. Before I continue, are there any questions or anything about like grant management in general or the awards management system?
Hi, Carla. It's Francis Sala. Can you send me the link? Because I haven't been able to log into this yet. So can you send me the link so I can get all logged in, please?
Absolutely. Hillary will send these slides out, which do have links on them as well.
Okay.
And then I'll make sure to follow up and that you specifically have the access that you need.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Let's see. Okay, so this is specifically for the hubs agreement. That's what I had in mind when I was creating this. So I believe that, well, at this point, you all got to see a draft version of the 23-25 agreement when Hillary was working on it over the summer. Thank you so much for providing all the feedback that you did. We took that and between, Hillary, Maria, leadership, myself, adjusted some things, got rid of some things, and tried to streamline the process for you. Overall, we saw an increase in funding across the board for this new agreement. The state fund, sub-awards that use state funds, so it's going to be Hub Coordination, your Stable, Healthy, Attached, and KPI, did receive increases around 4 to 4.2%. Unfortunately, the Title IV B2, which are federal funds that we get via ODHS, did slightly go down as the overall federal award was less than we were anticipating. But we tried to increase as much as we could across the board. We reduced and adjusted the amount and the types of reports that you need to submit throughout the agreement. Hillary worked very hard on that. There's a lot of streamlining, and we try to eliminate anything that felt like it was very duplicate to other work that you were already doing that we had access to as well. All claiming will be done in our awards management system, starting with this agreement for both hubs and for coordinated enrollment. And the expenditure reports will go out as soon as I have executed agreements for hubs. Since the hubs agreement went out with the final funding, like those are the real numbers. As soon as I get those signed, then I can turn around and send you the expenditure reports, and we'll make sure that the funds are loaded for you in EMS. And let's see. So speaking of expenditure reports, one of the things that we are changing this year, and we hope that it is makes it easier for you, is that we will be doing a smart sheet for uploading your hub reports. There'll be a second one as well for coordinated enrollment, just to keep them a little separate, but you'll have easy access to both of them. Instead of sending an email out to myself and Hillary, or myself and Maria, with the Excel spreadsheets, you will just upload it on this smart sheet, and we will all get it, and it'll be easy hopefully for you and for us. There will be a link to this smart sheet on your expenditure report, so you don't have to remember a new link or a new place to get something. It'll be right there. I've also included a link to AMS in your expenditure report as well. So once you have that spreadsheet open, you will be able to just submit both of them. Or once you have the spreadsheet open, you'll be able to click on both links and access both of those things as well. And I'm pretty sure I'm almost out of time, and I should have put this slide a little bit closer to the top. So I just wanted to really quickly go over just a couple things to remember about allowability. This is way bigger of a conversation than I can put in 60 seconds. I will share these slides out as well. But just high-level reminders: refer to your grant agreement. Especially for things like Title 4B, KPI, there's a lot of information in them that really write out activities and things that you can be doing with the funds. Make sure you ask your grant manager if you have any questions, you're not sure about something, especially if it's a large expense. Definitely reach out to me. Let's talk about it ahead of time, just to make sure if there's anything that is iffy about it, that we, take care of it ahead of time before the expense is actually happening. And then I left a couple of things that I stole from one of my other colleagues, and they are just questions that you can ask yourself when you're looking at those big expenses to kind of reflect on it before choosing to make those purchases. Of course, I am always here as well if you have any questions. And I know that one of the very, very, very big items on everyone's minds are, well, food and stipends versus gift cards. Those are two things that I know that you guys are wanting more guidance about. As an office, the grant management office is almost done having that guidance for you. But I wanted to have a kind of separate conversation about it where I had a little bit more time and we can dig a little deeper. So my plan is to, as soon as I have that guidance, send it out to you electronically, so you have a chance to look at it, and then set up office hours so we can answer any questions, hash things out if there's any concerns or situations that you want to review as well. All right.
I see Chris Collins has her hand up.
Yeah, I have a question about the smart sheet for the reporting.
Yeah.
So we've tried to use smart sheets before for reporting, and there have been challenges because they don't let you save and have another person add to it. I have a different person that does the financial report versus the programmatic information, and it's going to vary. Are they
So-
separate, or how is that working now?
So you're actually not using the smart sheet to fill out your report. You're just uploading that spreadsheet,
Oh,
the Excel spreadsheet that you've had before. So once you're all done doing all the people have touched it and filled it out, then you just upload it there instead of emailing it to me and Hillary. We've just had situations where sometimes one person gets dropped off the email, or some of us are out of town. I might have a backup if I'm on vacation in the grants office, and that way it's on a smart sheet and not sitting in my inbox. And so we can get things out the door faster if I'm not around.
Okay, perfect.
All right. And I think there was another question in the chat as well.
Yes, Danny asked, will this include the KPI report?
I don't think so. Hillary, you might want to, I think we're just using the smart sheet for expenditure reports, budget, and like, I think the other one was strategic plan, I believe, but not for the KPI reports. They have their own process. Yep.
Yes. All right, thank you, Carla. We will move on over to Dorothy Spence with an ERDC check-in. Dorothy?
Thank you, Maria. Can you remind me how much time you have allocated for this? I want to make sure I'm useful with my time.
I think we set about 20 minutes
Okay.
ish.
All right, and let's see. Hi, everybody. So first, I just want to say thank you to the those who were sharing out the messages that were released. It feels like 18 years ago, but probably was like 2 weeks ago, regarding the upcoming ERDC waitlist. A number of hubs and CCRNRs out in community. So just really grateful for that. I know I met with you all like a couple weeks ago. And so some of the information I'll share today will be a repeat, and I'll breeze over that. But I do have some additional information to share, and then happy to hear any questions that are coming up from partners on the ground or you all in navigating the ERDC waitlist. All right. Let's see if look, it's going to start on its own. Okay, so these are ERDC updates. The majority of this presentation is really focused on the waitlist, but touching on a few other things. We've already talked about this in the last update that I gave, just highlighting all of the policy changes that have happened over the last 2 years, the most recent ones in July being protected 12-month eligibility. So very few reasons that individuals might be removed from the ERDC caseload. The one that most common change is prior to July 1, individuals that applied and were approved for ERDC had 3 months to connect with a provider. As of July 1st, a family can apply and be approved for ERDC. And if they need longer than 3 months to connect to a provider that meets their needs, they won't be kicked off of the ERDC caseload. And then categorical eligibility for TANF families was the other most recent change. Again, you all have seen a version of this slide and this particular chart that shows the increase in the caseload over the last 2 years for ERDC. We know all of those changes that were made the program work better for families and providers. It was a 52% increase in caseload just for last biennium. And when we look at June to August, that's 22% just by itself. I do want to highlight the difference between active and inactive caseloads, because this did come up, I think, in our last conversation, and it's come up with CCRNR directors in particular as well. When we talk about an active caseload, so that dark blue line that ends with 10,135 families, those are individuals who have applied and approved for ERDC connected to a provider and ERDC is paying for the care that they've been approved for. The line on the bottom, the light blue line, is the inactive caseload. So these are individuals who have applied for ERDC, approved for ERDC, but not yet connected to a provider. So just highlighting that because that did come up before, and we are seeing an increase in the number of inactive cases now that we have 12-month protected eligibility. So I know one specific question that has come up is, are we able to get some information about the inactive caseload by county? You will receive a copy of these slides after this meeting. I'm going to send them to Hillary and Maria to send out to you all so you can have this specific slide for your own use. And we're trying to figure out the best process for being able to share this data with CCR&Rs and hubs on some sort of regular basis. But I can't confirm what that regular basis will be and the exact process. But that is a need I have heard from you all through our feedback form. But just to give you a sense of what the inactive caseload looks like by county right now, this is July. And you will see both numbers as well as percentages because, you know, in our more rural counties, a percentage can seem really high and then it just be 3 families, for example, using Lake as the example here. I'm going to pause for a second and ask, are there any specific questions folks have about inactive cases, active caseload, total caseload? Just because I know that's come up before, so I just want to pause for a second and see if there's any specific questions about this. Okay. So the other kind of data point that I wanted to share with folks is to give you a sense of not just the total caseload as it grows, but just how much new cases of ERDC have changed over the last 2 years, essentially. So prior to July 2023, ERDC used to gain about 500 new cases a month. And just July and August, you can see we have over 1,000 new cases a month. And we saw that in September as well. We get our monthly data on new caseload at the beginning of the following month. So at the beginning of October, we got September's data. So we're continuing to see this growth in ERDC, which is what has led us to the wait list that is coming after November 3rd. And the thing that we are hoping that hubs can continue to reinforce for families is up until 11:59 on November 3rd, please still encourage families who think they may qualify for ERDC to put in their application for ERDC. And I really want to emphasize this for preschool promise families who think that they may need ERDC to help cover before or after care. Families really should be going ahead and putting in their application now. After November 4th, if they apply and they don't meet an exemption, they're going to go on the wait list. But all the way up until 11:59 p.m. on November 3rd, families can apply for ERDC and they'll be screened for ERDC eligibility as usual. Again, we've mentioned this before, but as a reminder, once we enact the wait list after November 4th, no new families will be able to enroll in ERDC until the caseload drops, unless they're part of an exempt population. Caseload will drop as families leave the program. We expect that to be pretty slow. And once we get to the place where we can invite families off, families will have 45 days once they're invited off to reapply, and it's at that time that eligibility is determined. And again, you guys have seen these exempt populations, but just to confirm kind of who is exempt from the wait list once it's enacted, families already on ERDC and those recertifying if their cases at the end of the certification period. Families recently receiving TANF for the TANF Domestic Violence Survivor Grant, families referred by Child Welfare, and then Head Start contracted slots. So the communications that go out to families regarding the wait list, once the wait list is enacted, are going to happen in 2 different ways. The Oregon Eligibility Partnership, which governs the one eligibility system, automatically sends out what's called a denial notice if a family does not meet the exemption criteria. And we've initiated a change process that updates the language in that denial notice to make sure that they understand the exemption criteria, they know how to find out about 2-in-1 early learning hubs and the DELC website for more resources. And then DELC is also initiating some additional communications directly to families each month for any new families, and then quarterly for families that continues to sit on the wait list. And those DELC communications just have some more flexibility on what we're able to modify and put out to families. The one system is pretty rigid, and any changes take a long time or can be difficult to get through the process. And so we had to kind of have these two pathways of communication, one that's automated out of one eligibility and one that is through DELC that's going to be a little bit more of a manual process. Some of the tools that you all have hopefully received at this point or been alerted to that we've developed through our communication plan include the ERDC waitlist landing page, family resource guides that are in 5 languages. We're also have sent out direct communication to providers. We're in the process of that with families. We do have a partner toolkit that we've shared a link to that includes the FAQ and some links to the resources that exist for families. And then just we've also have a suite of resources that are specific to ODHS staff as well. The partner resources that are in the toolkit that I just mentioned, the FAQ document, which has links for the landing page for ERDC, the waitlist 1-pager that's in 5 languages, family resource guide in 5 languages, the press release that went out announcing the waitlist, as well as the note that went directly to ERDC providers so that anyone who has this partner toolkit can see all of that and have links to it, reference it in the future. Soon we will be updating that that toolkit link so that it also includes a letter to the families currently receiving ERDC. Trying to be as transparent as possible with you all about what communication is being sent to providers and to families. The newest item that we've created is a partner feedback form for use by partners and staff that can help us understand the kinds of questions that are coming up or resources that are being asked for. We cannot guarantee a specific response to every single entry, depending on how much we receive. So we really, please don't send this out to like specific providers or families that are wondering about their case. There are other avenues to solve that. This feedback form is really to help us inform future iterations of FAQs and in specific requests like around data to figure out whether or not the data strategies we're developing are going to meet the needs that folks are asking about. The last thing that I want to share with you all is I put together a partner work session in October to work towards some kind of some shared agreement on how support for families and providers will happen once there is a wait list. The goal really here is I think that there's going to be an idealized version of how we think this is going to happen. And then there's the reality of what our different system and programmatic constraints are with capacity, with the one eligibility system. So how do we right size what we expect to hope happen, what is realistic, and then also how are we going to create a structure for ongoing feedback to identify any emerging issues and continued collaborative problem solving. So some DELC program staff will be there. Child care assistance policy team staff will be there, and then 2 to 3 representatives from 2-in-1, TRI, Early Learning Hubs, CCR&R, Oregon Ask, and OPK Head Start. That is next week. It's a virtual work session, and we're still looking for names of 2 to 3 Early Learning Hub folks that would like to join us for that. And my goal is, while that's a small representation of each of these groups, to be able to come back to you all in a future Hub Director meeting, ideally in November if you have time for me, where I can report out what came out of this work session and get some additional feedback from you all about what we design in that work session. All right, how am I doing on time, Maria?
You're doing fantastic, Dorothy.
Okay, I'm going to just share my screen a little bit longer to make sure when I say partner toolkit, this is what I mean. In case you haven't seen it, the link that takes you to the partner toolkit should take you here. Well, let's put that in the chat. Make sure you all have it. All right. And it's a PDF document that will look like this right here, if you guys can see that. And then down at the bottom, this blue box is where there's links to additional resources. And what's going to be added here is the note that will go directly to families currently receiving ERDC. And then when I say partner feedback form, this is what that looks like. This is a smart sheet that you all have access to, enter feedback on, and I will put that in the chat as well. And I'm happy to take any questions, thoughts, feelings, whatever is coming to mind for you all. Thank you, Danny. Are there any specific requests you guys are getting or anything that you're hearing, or is it like, you know, this is not coming up at all in any conversations you guys are having? I think maybe just even a pulse check is helpful to know what's happening on the ground. We put out a lot of communication and just kind of getting a sense for that. And if you're not hearing anything, that's fine. Okay.
Right.
I'll take silence as everything that we've provided up to this point is helpful, and you do not need anything more at the moment. Great. I'm happy to stick around for a little bit in case I'll just go off camera if questions pop up. I can just be listening in.
Perfect. Thank you, Dorothy. All right, we'll move right on into our early learning transition check-in. I think we have Lauren and Rachel joining us.
Yeah, good morning, or good, I said morning. Oh my gosh, no, it's afternoon. Shows right, Hillary, right. No, well, thank you for having us. I'm Rachel Elliott. I am the Head Start Collaboration Director at the Department of Early Learning and Care and a collaborator in the Early Learning Transition Check-in. A couple of our colleagues couldn't make it today, but two are present to support giving you a brief presentation of the process of phase one. So I am going to have Lauren Sigmund jump in and then Sodi to introduce themselves. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm Lauren Sigmund. I apologize. I have a cold, so I'm going to let Rachel and Sodi do most of the talking today, but take very good notes of the conversation. I'm a preschool specialist at the Department of Early Learning and Care. So Rachel and I are kind of heading up the work on the DELC side around the new design of the kindergarten assessment. And I'll let Sodi introduce herself.
Good afternoon. My name is Sodi Fern, and I am the K-2 Balanced Assessment Specialist for the Oregon Department of Education. I work in the Office of Radar. I feel badly because Lauren and I presented this last week, and I had a cold, and I'm just getting over it, and now she has a cold. So sharing is caring, right? So I get to present the slides, but I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel to start us off.
Thank you. Can everyone see the screen okay? All right, I see some nods. Yeah, okay, great. Well, thank you again for having us. Like I mentioned before, the introductions of my colleagues Sodi and Lauren. We just wanted to give kind of a process update of where the phase one of the early learning transition check-in pilot is, where we are now. And you can go to the next slide, please.
Here we go.
All right, great. So the early learning transition check-in, a collaborative engagement with community, is called the Family Conversation. These are just some key points we wanted to call out in this reimagined process that was the kindergarten entry assessment, former kindergarten entry assessment. So we are continuing with community engagement in this co-creation and redesign process. ODE and DELC are working in collaboration to continuously respond to the historical concerns about the former kindergarten entry assessment. For example, assessing children that their first language isn't English and potential implicit bias with the approaches to learning aspect. We want to continually move the culture and shift the focus away from children being ready for kindergarten and instead think about the system itself being ready for the children and families and their needs and bringing in their experiences. So we're trying to shift that perspective. And then we are creating a way to look at how to prepare the educators, the school districts, communities, and systems that all support the children and family around this redesign. Sodi and Lauren, at any time, please jump in. I drank a lot of coffee, could miss some good bullet points. Just wanted to, put that out there. All right. So just to kind of understand where you are in your knowledge around the new kindergarten entry assessment, the early learn ELT. I'm just going to say ETLC. There we go. I'm just going to say that. So what do you already understand about the early learning transition check-in? And we'd appreciate anything put in the chat, or if you want to unmute to let us know. What do you already know about this phase 1, the pilot, the family conversation? What do you already know about it?
Hi there, this is Lisa. I'll just say that this is designed to really engage the family and sort of meet them where they are and get a sense of what goals and dreams they have for their child, as well as input on, how they're doing on various junctures.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? See some things in the chat. Thanks, Renee. It's culture appropriate than last iteration. Yes. Oh, you're looking at your notes. That's great, Michelle. I'm glad you have notes. So collect info about families, learning and care. Building relationships. Yeah, that connection's huge. Holistic view. Thank you. Anything else? And as people are thinking about that, we'll just move to the next slide and we could just unmute and put in chat either what you already know about the early learning transition check-in or any just like burning questions, top of mind questions about it that hopefully we can address as we go through this presentation. And if not, hopefully be able to answer after the presentation in the follow-up email that Hillary and or Maria sends out. Or am I just making that up or does that really happen? No, okay, great. So any burning questions around phase 1, the family conversation? And please chat or unmute, whatever feels most comfortable. Oh, Renee, very thoughtful of you to raise your hand, but we're so informal, just like unmute.
Thank you. The Oregon kindergarten assessment that the hubs had used for years, it was interesting because for the kind of data we were looking for, it was a useful data point, whether, there's a lot of controversy around it, but it was something that the hubs used. But what we heard from educators is they didn't use it at all. It was just checkbox, something they were required to do. And so since this is something that will be much more about relationship building and helpful for the teachers, I'm wondering what that means for those of us in systems work and what kind of data might still be available for us that would help our work.
Oh, Renee, I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I think we also had a conversation with Lisa yesterday and that point was brought up as well. And as Sodi jumps in just a moment, hopefully we can answer where that may in the spectrum of the phases of this early learning transition check-in, where that would fit in and how we're going to do some engagement around that data collection. Thank you so much. Anybody else? And Lauren, I know Lauren's taking notes for us, so we'll make sure that we have that piece that you mentioned.
I think we'll
Anybody
address some of that in the next few slides. But
I think so too, which is great. Any other burning questions?
I have some questions around how it's going to be actually implemented, knowing that this is going to be done with school districts, and if the idea is that the teachers get to know the kids, and in a lot of our districts they didn't do the assessments, it wasn't feasible, and just the staffing requirements to actually do one-on-one kind of conversations, and knowing that teachers they're contracted, they have unions and working outside of certain hours. How is that going to roll out?
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate those questions. And Sodi, are you? Yes.
I love these questions. I mean, like, it was almost like we were thinking about them as we were designing this PowerPoint presentation. Beautiful questions. Thank you.
Anything else before I turn it over to Sodi to continue some more informational dialogue with you?
Oh, you have one more slide before.
Do I really? Are you sure?
Yes.
I do. Look at that. Thank you for keeping me on track, because I thought it was the morning. It's the afternoon. Who knows where I am today? So we wanted to make sure that we connected you with the idea around the alignment with the new strategic plan of Raise Up Oregon 2.0, and how that this connects, the early learning transition check-in process connects, especially with, we wanted to point out Objective 16, which is children and families experience supportive transitions and continuity of services across early learning and care and public education. So we just put a couple in there that we felt the objectives really connected with what we're doing in this process, this pilot process. And we'll send out the PowerPoint later so you can take a peek. And if we're missing anything and you're in tune with Raise Up Oregon 2.0, and after this presentation you think another objective we missed or something else we should think about in regards to this strategic plan, please let us know. Okay. Is that your turn now, Sodi?
It is.
Oh my goodness. All right, passing it on.
Thank you. I want to say thank you for allowing us to come and talk about this early learning transition check-in. It has been 2 years in the making of just behind, like, working with an advisory group, doing some listening sessions with families, and really engaging community in this process. And while DELC was becoming its own agency, we had to kind of, like, maneuver around that too. So I feel like this meeting with you should have happened a year ago. And we are now here. And I feel like this is a great opportunity to share where we're at, but know that we are still in pilot phase. Nothing, while this first component that I'm going to talk about is the first component, we still don't know what other components may or may not be added to the early learning transition check-in, this process to redesign, reimagine the kindergarten assessment based on feedback that has been provided to us by educators, community members, families about its utility and the concerns. So for some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing about the family conversation or the ELTC. For others, you may have read some articles, maybe seen, maybe even been a part of a conversation yourself with your own child. But as a quick recap, the vision is that each fall, kindergarten educators will meet one-on-one with every family entering their classes. In our first pilot, we called it the family interview. And after some feedback, we have changed it in year 2 to the family conversation. This conversation is a structure that we think will support educators in this, like, initial get to know you conversation with children and their parents. And the questions in the conversations will help, we think, collect information about children's and families' experiences in early learning and care. And we will show you those questions here in a few moments. What we think is really exciting about this work is that we think it advances equity by taking this more holistic view, addressing what the concerns were for many of our focal groups that have been historically and currently underserved by our systems. And it's an opportunity for them to share really important contextual information about themselves and shifting away from kids and children being ready for school to the systems being ready for students, no matter what their experience prior to kindergarten was. We're always asked, what is it that we're asking during these conversations, right? The first two questions are about laying the foundation of getting to know the child and the family and hoping to make a connection. This is an opportunity where an educator listens deeply. And then the last two questions, which round it out, are what else do you want to know about the child? And it's meant for families to take the lead. Now, the ones in the middle are probably the ones that you are most interested in. Here are the ones that I think are relatable to what you do in your work. The first one being, and we think that it will, the first one being, what kinds of childcare did your family have for your child? What experiences, programs, services did your child receive, participate in to help them learn and grow? The third one, of the experiences, programs, and or services you mentioned, which one would you say was the most helpful to you and your child and your family? And then last, which experiences, programs, or services do you wish your child had received? And I'll pause there just to give you a moment to think about those questions. What's important to note is that during these conversations, teachers have an opportunity to either type the responses into a database or take notes on a clipboard on paper and pencil and then transfer their notes into a database later. These questions that you see in front of you are more close-ended, and so we have a drop-down menu for them to choose from. So there aren't a wide variety of things that families have would indicate. This is a timeline for our year one pilot, and I will fill in the gaps for year two in a little bit. But we started with recruitment. We started with 9 schools in 2022. And we went through the engagement process. After the pilot, we had family feedback sessions as well as educator feedback sessions. And during that time, they gave us information to help us propel to year 2 with a larger number of schools communicating more frequently, more often. One thing that I do want to note on this slide deck is that last one, in February 2023, the State Board of Education adopted new language around the kindergarten assessment. In fact, it is not called that any longer. It is called the Community Informed Information Gathering Process at Kindergarten. And some notable changes about that. First of all, the language has shifted to more of an asset framing way for families and students. It's not focusing on deficits. It's centering equity and anti-racist practices by allowing for a stronger relationship to be built at the child's K-12 career, as opposed to this assessment that serves as a barrier for a long-term impact and success. It removes the word assessment, completely removes it from the language in order to reinforce this holistic approach to systems being ready for children. And it allows for flexibility to include more or other future components that are culturally responsive and that we think are necessary through our engagement process with partners such as yourselves. So I talked about year one pilot, and I talked about the, our feedback sessions that were held. They were actually hosted by some people called the Oregon's Kitchen Table. And they're a nonpartisan, nonprofit community organization that's dedicated to helping Oregonians have a voice. And they specialize in helping the voices of marginalized communities so that they can share and uplift their voices so that we hear from them directly. So they had some 4 recommendations after the first pilot. The first being making sure that we had timely communication with educators and families so that the conversation is done in a more seamless way. Put the questions that we're asking in terms of context instead of just like question, 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 like a list, but making sure it's more of a conversation. The third was to provide lots of opportunities for follow-ups with family. And then the last was to strengthen culturally specific outreach for families. And we took that report and we decided there were some things that we could really work on. 2 big ideas. One being communication, and then the other being refining our professional learning materials. First of all, we went to a name change. We knew that the word interview elicits this power dynamic between one entity over another, and we wanted to make sure that that was not the case. The name reflects what it will become, and so we think that conversation is more a two-way situation. Also, we know we need to communicate more clearly and more often. My director's not here today, but Andrea Lockhart, her phrase is communicate 10 times, 3 different ways, as many ways as possible. Opportunities for educators to ask clarifying questions directly to ODE and DELC. Last year in the first pilot, we had a optional Q&A session, and we found, based on feedback and based on data, that the school districts that actually took advantage of the optional Q&A sessions, the families had a better experience, more positive experience. And so we made that a requirement this last year. In terms of the professional learning materials, we wanted to make sure there was a clear purpose. Now, you all told us about what this is to build relationships with their educators, kindergarten educators, and it's designed to build relationships with the educator that they will have. It's not designed to build relationships with somebody else. And so we are working with school districts to make sure that actually happens. We're going to communicate often. We're going to have some informational webinars this coming November. We're working with OEA. We have a proposal that will go out to present to them and their members in February. Also, OEA has written a written statement to the State Board of Education in support of the family conversation, because they know that family engagement is so important to student success and for educator success with students. We implemented a new technique that many of the researchers here on this call will know, assurance techniques. And this is a technique that many researchers do already to affirm what families have said and make sure that what they actually stated was what we heard and what will be documented into the database. We created a facilitation guide that was more robust, putting those questions into context, telling a story versus having those questions just like one after another. We also created a video for any educator who wanted to see a conversational family conversation happening, just to answer any lingering questions, to give them this idea. So those were the things that we implemented this last fall. with over 30 schools. I can't remember if it's 32 or 34 schools, but with a larger number of schools. And they are in the midst right now of entering all their data. And we will be, Oregon's Kitchen Table will be holding their first educator feedback session tonight. So I'm hoping we hear back on how that went very, very soon. This slide just shows you regionally where our pilot schools are located. We wanted to make sure that both large school districts and small school districts were represented. We also wanted to make sure that the entire state was represented, so that we have some schools in Eastern Oregon, on the coast, Southern Oregon, in Zone 5, which is Multnomah County area. But again, we wanted to make sure all the zones were represented in our pilot, so that we can make an informed decision about what next steps should be. I love this question. And I love it because it's talking about a story. What is the story? What is the story the data is telling us? Well, one, families have said that they value the opportunity to share about their child, sharing those important contexts, their hopes and dreams, and their experiences prior to them entering kindergarten. We learned that educators also value this opportunity to meet with families. They feel like it's a great time to welcome families into the classroom, answer any burning questions that they have, share some context about themselves so that families understand who they are, and learn some contextual information about students. I know that in the first pilot, we heard directly from educators who said they implemented some things right away after learning from families about a child. And that's powerful. We also know this is a transformational shift. You alluded to this when you asked about teachers' unions, time, teachers being the ones who would be conducting these interviews. It is transformational. No, when I first started at ODE, my first project was to do a 50-state scan about the kindergarten entry assessments that other states do, knowing about the concerns that were shared during our informational webinar or informational meetings that we held in 2019. We know that we need to support districts to create a school calendar that will support having family conversations at the very beginning of the school year. School calendars are super important because there are OERs in place that count parent-teacher conferences or meetings as instructional time. So promoting that with school boards, promoting that with school districts is going to be key to the success of this. We also know that we need to build our muscle in terms of data collection with teachers, the analysis and the reporting. And we're hoping that with more funding from both agencies that we'll be able to do an RFP process. And also with our advisory panels who are some of them are researchers, some of them, some new internal internal work group people who are also researchers will help us because their muscles are around qualitative research versus quantitative research, which is what we have been traditionally normed to think is best, right? And then the shift for how states are collecting the disaggregated data, we know that that's going to be a shift, and we're going to need to help school districts, help partners disaggregate that so that they have the best information to inform their programs. Year one pilot was basically learning if we could actually do this, and year two pilot is really refining how we're going to do it and making sure that we can scale it up statewide. So with that, I will pause for a second, ask if there are any questions before I turn it over to Rachel.
I have a question.
Of course.
On the data collection, the slide where you had asking about their experiences in early childhood programs. You said there's gonna be a drop-down menu that the teachers would indicate what's the breakdown on what teachers would select?
Is Lauren on? I do not have that in front of me. But top of mind, Lauren, do you happen to know?
Sorry, trying to find my mute button. Yeah, I will post it in the chat, the different options that they have that they're able to enter.
Select.
So here's my concern. Depending on how the breakdown is, not every kindergarten teacher knows all the programs. So if someone says, oh, my kid's teacher was Teacher Linda, and it was at that place over by the 7-Eleven. The teacher's not necessarily going to know, is that a Head Start program, a preschool promise program, a childcare program? And so depending on how those options line out, the data might not be really helpful, or it might not be entered correctly. And for me, that's a big concern because we collect this data already. And if this ends up replacing the data that we collect, that's a little bit more robust, then we end up in a deficit of data. And so it would be really helpful if there was a way, I don't know how that would work, but to make sure that when they say this is the kind of program my kid was in, if there was a way, if they don't know, they could put it somewhere, and then the hubs are reached out to, or somebody was reached out to say, hey, can you help us figure out what this should be? Because we can do a little bit more digging and figure out like, oh, that's where this kid went. This is the kind of program it was. But the kindergarten teachers, they don't always know, especially if they're new, and they don't have time to figure that out.
Thank you, Erin, for bringing that up.
Yes, they do, which is a beautiful thing in itself, right? Knowing the teacher's name, but it's hard not to when the data collection isn't as authentic or truth when they don't know the actual program. So very awesome points, and I'm glad you all brought it up so we can have it for our engagement sessions and advisory sessions so we can bring these points to the surface.
I'm trying to think of different ways that we could do that.
Yeah, I know. Sodi's already thinking.
I'm already thinking.
So I have another question.
Of course.
You talked about being equitable with this, but how are you addressing equity in reaching the families? I mean, are teachers expected to do home visits for families that can't come to the school? What about families who are working in the fields or in agriculture and or shifts? And so like the only time they can meet is like 8 o'clock at night. What about families where we have a lot of Guatemalan families who speak regional dialects and we don't have enough interpreters? So what are the supports being put in place around like interpreting or just knowing that and even there might even be families who don't want to be interviewed. So are there going to be supports for teachers on like how do we address that? Are there ways that they can document that they've made attempts, but the families don't want to participate?
Yes. So in our database collection form, we ask teachers to ask permission. First and foremost, this tool, this protocol is to help build relationships, right? So that it sets children off on the right foot starting kindergarten, right? In order to build in order to collect the data that you're asking for, they have to have those relationships being built, right? And so we ask them to ask permission first, because for various reasons, many families don't want to share. And that's their choice, that's their prerogative. And we need to respect that. In terms of language support. There are different ways that school districts have done this. One school district has resources to hire the interpreters that you were talking about. And when there are languages that are not spoken by these interpreters, they use a program, I think, Lauren, it's called Language Line. And they've been using that. It follows the same sort of protocol that they've had with parent-teacher conferences that they have every fall and every spring with school districts. So as much as we want to say this isn't transformational, it is in a sense that it's done at the very beginning of kindergarten, but school districts already reach out to families in a systematic way to make sure that they get families to school. This should be done face-to-face, but there are options. If face-to-face is not an option, then they could be done over the phone. What we don't want to do is to have teachers send this information home to families, because that doesn't meet both purposes of building relationship and understanding the experiences prior to kindergarten. Now, I don't, for other school districts that don't have as many languages that need to be translated, I would ask them to think about their protocols that they usually use when it's time for family and parent-teacher conferences. I know that we have included culturally responsive techniques in order to help support school districts who typically would not engage with families who may not answer their email, and we've included some implicit bias training in our webinars, and those are required trainings for them to be thinking about their equity stance and through the lens of families. It is a start. It is not perfect. I'm not going to tell you, Erin, that it's perfect, because it's not. And we are learning as much from school districts in this pilot as they are learning from us.
Hi, I was just wondering if you can speak to the timing. You said that this was given at the beginning of kindergarten. So is this once children are already enrolled and starting, or at what place does that happen?
It's designed to be done after the child has been assigned to their classroom teacher. And so in some school districts, they assign them without a staggered start. In other school districts, I've heard they do staggered starts with all of their kindergarten students, and then every single kindergarten teacher has this conversation with families. And they get to know each and every family as a team. In other school districts, it's not the case. And there's some, maneuvering that happens afterwards. But it is designed to be done at the very beginning to get to know families and before any academic measures are completed.
We want to recognize that sometimes, if you're like me, I like to absorb and reflect and then have my questions posed. So if that is how you process, we invite you to continue asking questions, and we have a general email at the end of our slide deck here that you can send those questions to, or you have Lauren, myself, and Sodi's contact if there's direct questions you'd like to ask us regarding this work. So I know I'm looking at a time check here. Hillary, is it, can we continue, finish, or what does that look like for all of you?
Yeah, let's, can we do like 6 minutes? Can you wrap up in that time frame?
I sure can. Yep. Thank you for the flexibility with time, and so appreciative of our dialogue today. It's very important. I'm putting so as a continuing part of this redesign process, community engagement, culture and specific partner community engagement sessions continue. We would love your help in identifying community partners that would be potential potential connections that we could make in order to have some engagement sessions with around this redesign. And so I'm going to put in the chat an Google Excel spreadsheet that has specific questions to support any ideas you have around partners that we should be reaching out to. We will again bring this link into the follow-up email, so you can on some other moment in time that you can add to it. Another piece is we do, as mentioned before by myself and Sodi, we have an advisory panel made up of researchers, practitioners, and a diverse group of individuals that come together for large meetings to help with, advising the trajectory of this work. We're continuing to promote the family conversations with school district leaders, et cetera, as Sodi had mentioned. We are focusing with qualitative data with the family conversation questions, just to relook and see how this qualitative data can support partners' work as well as a continued process in this project. We're continuously updating training materials as well as the implementation materials that Sodi mentioned about the facilitation guide, et cetera, for educators and practitioners. And we're continuing to think about what other piloting components need to be layered on the family conversation and support the system work across sectors of partners, et cetera. And so again, this is phase one of hopefully a redesign project that continues, and we'll continue coming back to all of you as we go through this process to continue engagement with you. And next slide, please. With the essence of time, we will just leave this quote for you to read later, but wanted to share an educator quotation around the experience they've had. And the beginning just mentions, I am so excited about this shift. We have done family conversations for years, and the impact it has and the tone it sets for the start of the incredible year, etc. So we just wanted to share an impact statement for one of the educators providing this experience, as well as a family quotation of their experience through this process. And I think I talked really fast and I do apologize. However, I want to honor your time. Is there any lingering questions? Thank you, Jillian. I see what you put in the chat. I'm so sorry. Please continue, Maria.
No, I was just going to read the question. Would it be possible to have our family councils contribute thoughts?
I think that's something we could put in the spreadsheet and have it a definite partner conversation. I think we always think about where we can bring families in and the hub or the committee together. I feel like I just either shut off the recording because I was talking too much and then I came back on. Okay. Yes. So I appreciate you bringing it up, Jillian, because that's been on top of mind for us too. So if you're able to put it in the spreadsheet, great. If not, one of us can do that. And there is the email, the general email, the pre-K check-in. If you have additional questions that's generalized and you'd like to just mention after you absorb what we talked about today, as well as the individuals that were myself and my partner, Sodi and Lauren, you can reach out to us directly with any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns. And please stay transparent, stay authentic, stay vulnerable in this process with us. And nothing should be off the table in our conversations with this. And we want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sodi, Lauren, and Rachel.
That was so great. Thank you so much. And I love that invitation to continue to have open and honest conversations. Thanks so much, everyone. That was a lot of information. So let's end the meeting with all of that information. I'm going to send out an email with so many resources in it, and I'm sorry. So if you need them separately, I'm happy to just reach out to me. As always, if you need anything just reach out to Maria or I, and we are happy to help support you in this work. Have a great day.